All right, welcome, Candidate Conversations with Skye, where we get to know candidates in a candid way about who they are and what they're passionate about when they're running for office. So we're here today with Melissa Rosenberg. She's running for New York State Assembly District 69. That's the open seat on the Upper West Side. So welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you, Skye.
So tell us a little bit about you for people who don't know you. Give us a little background on who you are and why you are the way you are.
Sure. I've been working in public service for, the last almost 10 years. And in my spare time, I've made the questionable choice, perhaps, of being on the community board for the last 7, which has been a labor of love. So I've been very involved during my time living here. I've been in this neighborhood about a decade, but have some kind of deep roots in it from my family. My great-grandmother was actually born a few blocks away from where I am now, and on 100th Street, and my uncle went to Columbia and actually protested Vietnam during his time there. My grandfather taught there for decades, so it feels sort of like me moving here was a homecoming, and really fed my desire to get more involved. And a lot of my desire to get civically involved branched from me experiencing going to community board meetings for the first time in New York City. And for anyone who hasn't gone, it can feel like walking into a room where people are all talking about issues they only know are going on. A lot of older people. I felt like conversations that were directing important things to me in my community were happening with a really small group of stakeholders that didn't feel reflective of people like me. So that was a big inspiration that really set me on my path to getting more deeply engaged in public service and community service. And that has sort of brought me to here where I am today.
When you talk to other young people, like colleagues and friends and neighbors, do you find it difficult to get them civically engaged also? Because what you say is true. You go to these community board meetings and it's a lot of older people who have been involved for a while. It's hard to sort of get new blood involved.
Definitely. I think, number one, people don't know it exists. And I feel, being out now on the campaign trail, I've been having some great conversations, but the majority of them start with like, wait, there's an election? I thought we already had our primary. So there isn't a lot of civic engagement, and, finding ways to get people engaged is a challenge. And I think for a lot of people, they don't come to it until there's an issue that they feel personally affects them in some way. And, whether it's potentially like a homeless shelter opening near their home, which, is sometimes it could be a really good way to get involved, or kind of a more negative way to get involved with issues in your neighborhood. Or if it's having an almost accident because there's no light on your street corner. I think it's talking to people and trying to find that issue that's important to them and trying to tie it into how civic engagement is something that can help them affect change on that, even if it's on the most kind of micro scale kind of way.
Was there one of those defining moments for you that you said, okay, I'm going to run? Because I know you've been working in this political government arena for, like you said, 10 years. Was there something that happened that you said, okay, this is it, I'm going to run?
Partly it was like my real passion is around housing affordability, addressing the homelessness crisis. It's where my work has been focused the last 7 years, I think. And seeing just all this kind of fighting over policy without anything moving forward, especially in Albany last year. I'm glad to see that some progress was made this year. That was definitely really frustrating for me to watch. And it was a big inspiration for when Danny O'Donnell announced he was retiring, for me to take the plunge. I've worked in the space. I've actually helped create housing out in the world. And it felt like, having sat on all sides of the table, I could bring a really unique take to the position, having sat with elected officials, having been sort of lobbied in my capacity as a community board member, having been one to sit down with nonprofits or developers creating housing and hearing from them what the problems are. I thought I can bring this unique set of experiences that allow me to look at a really diverse set of issues with a diverse set of kind of viewpoints.
Okay. And now, because it's an open seat, right? There's a lot of people in this race. What makes you the best candidate? What makes you the best choice for this seat?
So I think part of what I just touched on is really important. I think it's important to have had a foot in every sector. I've spent years of my career at nonprofits being an advocate. I've spent years in government, but I've also spent years in the public sector. And I think having that diversity of experience makes you really better at your job. And I've also worked on a really kind of interesting combination of issues. I worked in grad school on gun violence prevention policy and how it intersects with intimate partner violence. I worked on how do we diversify the medical workforce so folks can see doctors who look like them when they're getting treatment. And I've, of course, worked on affordable housing and homelessness. So, I think this, again, diversity of knowledge is helpful. And, lastly, I think female representation is incredibly important. I think me being a woman running matters. And I've heard that from women I'm speaking to in the street. We're at this moment where on the national stage, we're seeing our rights being completely crushed, whether it's IVF or overturn of Roe. And I think if we're not setting up the next generation of female leaders who can, rise to positions of power, we're going to see this continued chipping away of our rights. So, to me, I think having that representation in this district is an important step forward. I think we've only ever had one assemblywoman here for 2 years, I believe, in the 1970s. So I think it's the time has come for more female leadership here in the Upper West Side and Morningside.
Okay. And I know when you run a campaign and politics is your passion, it sort of takes over your life, but are there any hobbies or passions you have outside of this space that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. I mean, I'm an avid runner, so that's definitely something that helps me deal with some of the stress of the campaign. But also, my friends think I'm really weird because I tend to listen to podcasts when I run, which they're like, "How do you do that? It seems really boring and arrhythmic." But I feel like I enjoy it because I get to learn about something while working out. So I get to kind of multitask, which, feeds in well with my personality, need to be always doing something. So that's a big passion of mine. Also, definitely love cooking. I feel like at the end of the day, sometimes even a lot of chopping could be helpful for processing of things of how hard your day has been, turning on some music while I do it, or listening to a podcast. So those are two things that definitely help me, I think, balance out sort of the intensity of the work and give me also the me time that you don't really get when you're doing politics, because so much of it is just talking to other people.
Right. What about when you're cooking? Do you follow a recipe or is it sort of haphazard?
I like to just kind of experiment, invent recipes. I try to do a lot of I'm very vegetable heavy at home, so a lot of playing around with spices and different combinations. Love a squash, so definitely try to create my own recipes at home. But I will say absolutely no baking. I feel like people fall into those two categories of cook or baker, and I am staunchly cook.
All right, so now we have a little flavor of who you are, Melissa Rosenberg. Thank you for joining us on Candid Conversations, and we'll be following along on your race.